Hi, this is Mike Ignatoski, the creator of the GreenFox spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that uses Excel programming to make it behave like a computerized baseball scorebook or score sheet. It also automatically computes the game stats, which can be a big time saver. And even better, GreenFox can be configured to operate in one of three different league modes where it can track the cumulative stats for all players and teams in the league.
In this video, I'm going to cover the new features in version 4.3 of the GreenFox spreadsheet. So, and to do that, I'm going to go to the score sheet here, use my league sheet navigator, and on the miscellaneous tab, I added this new sheet, which is the LVFL, it just shows a blown up version of what's new with this feature. It's pretty much also listed on the version info in this smaller box, but I made this really just for these videos, so that's what I'm showing off. So let's go through each of these and see how they work. So number one here says on the schedule or the sched sheet for the historical leagues, team season and league season league. When saving the game results, it'll update the starting pitchers on the schedule if the actual starters were not scheduled. So I've had a few questions about this. Let's see what that means or how this works. So let me go to this other spreadsheet I have. In this league setup, I have the 1971 Detroit Tigers, and I've been playing these Mickey Lolich starts. But let's, for the sake of this feature, let's look at this game here, game 35 here. So this game where the Tigers starting pitcher is Bill Zepp. So if I don't have Bill Zepp, let's say in my game, so in my card set for the 71 Tigers, I don't have Bill Zepp. He didn't pitch many games, so maybe your game doesn't have this guy just because of lack of usage. So if you go to the unlock and try to change your starter here, but if you try to change it, it won't let you. It's like because it's still protected. So because these are loaded from the baseball reference data set, these were the actual starters, so you can't change them here. So I'm going to lock this back. And so what will happen is if I load this game into my score sheet, so let me just do that and click this game ID. So now here's my score sheet. And down here pitching for the Tigers against the Red Sox is Bill Zepp. But now before I start my game, I have the opportunity to switch the starter to a pitcher that I have in my game. So I can click this. Do I want to replace Bill Zepp? Yes, I do. And I'm going to pick, somebody who is available to start. Even though he doesn't start much, I'll pick Mike Kilkenny. So to do that, now I play my game, and when I'm all done, and when I want to save it, and I click this green Save Game Results and Stats, what that will do is when it updates this line here with denoting the score and who won and all that jazz, it'll then change either starter, home or visitor, if the actual starter happened to be a different pitcher. So it'll change it, once its game is played, it'll update these starters if needed. So that's how that feature works. The next feature I'm going to talk about is actually two of them because they go together, numbers 2 and 3, which together I'm kind of calling the batting lineup hover stats. And so it really kind of has two pieces. The first one is this new game option, number 21, to enable or disable the hover tips. And line 3 talks about what it actually is doing is on the score sheet, the batting lineup names now will have a mouse hover tip that will show a simple summary of the player's season batting stats as they were before the game started, as long as your season or cumulative batting stats are up to date. So let's see how that works. Okay, now back to my 1971 Tigers historical team season league. Here's my schedule with my Mickey Lolich games. I'm going to first filter this so I just see what I want. So I'm going to use this green button here, pick Mickey Lolich. I just want to see him. Yes. That kind of just filters my schedule down to the games I'm really interested in. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is make sure my stats are up to date. So if I use my navigator here, go to the stats. Yeah, what I want to focus on is season player batting stats. So here's, which is the CPBS, or cumulative player batting stats. I'm going to click this orange button here. It says, I could just pick the blue one just to compute the batting, but I'm going to do it for both, or I'm going to even use this one to do it for all the team stuff too. But I'm just going to go with this one now for the cumulative batting and pitching. So I'll click that. I'm going to do a couple backflips, depending on your computer. Your mileage may vary, but so now it's done. I'm going to go back to my schedule, pick my next game, which is this game against the Brewers. And you can see it did it. We should have shown on the game options. Here is that option number 21 for this mouse upper tip. But as I said, by default for this version, it's on. So unless you want to turn it off, you don't have to do anything. And the most important part here is what I just mentioned is you have to compute the stats before you start your game, before you load your lineup into the score sheet. So if I go to my score sheet now, you can see here all these little red triangles for all these batting lineup names. That's in Excel, it's called a cell note, or sometimes it's a comment, but I think it's typically referred to as a note. But anyway, just like up here with these notes, they kind of give you these helpful tips. Now it's going to give you these batting stats. If I look at Willie Horton, hover on him, these are the stats. So you see we get games, at bats, hits, average, walks, and on base percentage, homers, RBIs, slugging percentage, OPS, slugging plus on base, stolen bases, and this last one is their current hitting streak. So he's got a 2-game hitting streak going. So that's how these work. And you can see here, uh, each player has their own. It doesn't. I don't think these go away until you move your mouse. You know? So it's not like it just goes, it stands up. It isn't like it just shows it for a couple seconds and it automatically goes away. So as long as you don't move your mouse, you can look at it. It only loads it for the batters, except the pitcher. Although the pitching has this thing up here, but it's just talking about this home pitcher cell. It doesn't show his stats. If we go down here to the Brewers, you'll see here that all their players don't have one. Like Patton, Mitchell, and Johnny Riggs are missing one, and that's because if we hover on these guys, you can see here it looks like Mickey Lolich has only faced the Brewers one time this year so far. So there's only one game that the Brewers have played. And my guess is that Johnny Briggs, Bobby Mitchell, and Marty Patton, they haven't batted yet or haven't played in a game yet this season. And if they haven't played, they don't have any of these hover tips. So that's why their cells are blank. But after this game, it gets saved. They'll have some stats, so they'll be in for the next game. I don't know if I'll end up doing something for the pitchers. I'll see what I can do, or at least I'll think about it. And I don't have any immediate plans for allowing users to decide what stats are in this window. I'm not going to say I'll never do it, but I'm thinking this is a pretty good list of things to have in there. But, so one other thing I'll show, or another thing about it, is that obviously this is a league only feature. So if you're using the score sheet or the spreadsheet in free play mode, you won't have this feature. This is only for leagues, but I figure that's really what most everybody is using this spreadsheet for, is to keep track of their league stats. Another thing I want to show here is, let's pretend that McCullough starts off, gets hit by a pitch and injured on the first plate appearance of the game. So he gets hit in the arm, he's got to come out. So we need a pinch runner. So let's bring in a pinch runner and somebody to play second base. Let's make it Cesar Gutierrez. Pick him. Once I put him in, you'll see then it adds the little triangle there so I can see his stats also. So it isn't just the starters, but once they get in the game in the lineup, it'll also show their stats. So that's how the new lineup, I'll say batting lineup hover stats feature works. I hope you like it. Next on the feature list is a minor update to the Qwik-Skor feature of the score sheet. And you can see here it says, the PO, or what was the pop-out cell, now cycles through three options. GO, which can be ground out or generic out, fly out, or pop out. Let's see how this works. So this is not a league only feature, it works everywhere. So if I go to my score sheet here, so here I have it in free play with Brady Bunch versus Cheers. And if I go to my game options, you can see here I'm going to turn on the Qwik-Skor feature. So that's option number 17. So turn that on. And if we look at this help button here, this is kind of the cheat sheet for all these cells inside one of these score sheet batter blocks, is what I call it. But if we look at this primary and Qwik-Skor, you'll see here, this is where it tells you what the cells mean in both modes. So now that I have Qwik-Skor on, this cell up here is the ground out, fly out, pop out cell. So if I click that cell right here for Cindy, you'll see it makes it ground out, which is the first one. If I click the same cell again, you'll switch it to a fly out, or maybe a fall out if you want to call it that. If I click it one more time, now it's PO for a pop out. I click it again, it cycles back to ground out. So this is a very minor update to the Qwik-Skor feature. And really, it was just a little pet peeve of mine when I was using it for some games, that it seemed like I was using the pop out to cover all those generic out scenarios of lots of ground outs, fly outs, and pop outs, but it seemed like the pop out happened the least often. So I decided, because it seemed like ground outs were more common, and just because I figured it wasn't too hard to do, I decided to make that the default is GO, and but still give you an option with one more click or two to turn it into a fly out or a pop out. There's no line out in there, but anyways, so that's the minor tweak. I can show it here in the Qwik-Skor only. Here is that this cell now is, instead of being the PO for pop out as it used to be, now it offers three choices for your score sheet. And obviously, none of them affect any stats, but if you just like your score sheet to be a little more accurate, it by default now starts out at ground out, then goes to fly out, and then goes to pop out. If you click it again, it'll just go back to ground out. You can decide however you want to. So that's that feature. Minor update to the Qwik-Skor. Feature number 5 here has to do with the electronic dice roller if you use that feature. What it says is if you have multiple rows of dice configured, when you quote roll the top row, all the other rows of dice below are reset to an unrolled state. So let's see what that means. And this is a tweak I made mainly based on my own experience in playing with it. But so if I go to my dice, show my dice, I have these dice usually configured it in a Stratomatic setting, but I played some other games and I think the concept is the same, where you have kind of a main dice roll when you begin a plate appearance. You have a main dice roll, and then that may lead you to roll other dice combinations to resolve what actually happened. So, as an example here, if I roll this, and then maybe I got to roll my 20 sided to see what might happen next, and that let's say that all goes in to Peter Brady hitting a single. Now, when Jan's up, as soon as I roll this main roll for Jan, the new feature is this 20-sided roll of 12 will reset. So as soon as I click this down and it rolls it back up, you'll see this gets reset. And I did that because sometimes that way I don't get confused about did I roll this 20 already for this or did I not roll it? And because typically, again, you have a main roll and then you might have a couple other dice rolls depending on what path your outcome takes. But this way, with each main roll, as long as you set up your main roll as the top row, that if you roll something down here, once you roll the top row again, these will all get reset. So you know when you're looking at it if you already rolled it for this batter or not. That was my theory anyway. This is a very minor feature, and maybe nobody even cares about it, but it's something that I noticed in my own gameplay that made it easier for me to keep track of what I rolled when for what batter. So that's why I made this minor change. So that's the dice rolling enhancement in version 4.3. The last couple things I want to mention, well, one of the 7th feature here is this sheet, this LVFL sheet, this latest version feature list. So that's simply this list we're looking at now. Really has an aid to make these videos, so I decided to put it in the spreadsheet. But last one I'm going to talk about here, number 6, is pretty minor also, especially if you really know what you're doing already, but it has to do with when you open the new version for the first time on the welcome screen. It automatically loads some lineups if you want to learn how to use the score sheet. So let's see how that works. So here's version 4.3. I just opened it up and I now get this welcome screen that you get typically when you upgrade or if you download it for the first time. But one of the options here, this yellow option, says explore GreenFox score sheet using free play mode. And this is, I would say, really helpful for newer users. So, because the point of this is to help you learn how to use the score sheet, even though it's using free play mode. It's not in a league mode, but the score sheet works pretty much the same way, whether you're in a league mode or free play mode. So now when you click on, choose the yellow button here to explore the score sheet using free play mode, you'll see what it does here is it switches the mode from league question mark to free play mode, and then it automatically loads some lineups and gives you this message. It says that pretty much how to tells you that it loaded this lineup using the two teams of Looney Tunes and Cheers so that you can learn how to use the score sheet. So that's really all it does. So you see here, this is the Looney Tunes starting lineup facing Sam Malone, who's starting for Cheers. And similarly, you have the Cheers lineup down here facing Bugs Bunny. But really, it's just so that users can not worry about entering any lineup names or starting pitchers or that kind of stuff, but just get into using the score sheet and understanding how it works. That's the main point of it. So that's the last feature of version 4.3.
Well, that wraps up this GreenFox video. I hope you found it helpful. But either way, I'd appreciate any feedback, whether it's what you liked about the video or the spreadsheet, or things you didn't like about the video or spreadsheet, or ideas that you have to make either the videos or the spreadsheet to make it work better. I appreciate all the feedback. Thanks again for taking the time.